Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to draw a detailed dog eye. For this demonstration, I am going to be using pastels on pastel matte paper, but you can use whatever you have at home. Graphite, colored pencils, or paints. It really doesn't matter. Just use whatever you have at hand. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the techniques of how to get the detailed dog eyes. It really doesn't matter what medium you're using. Just go through the steps with whatever you have. The photo I am using was downloaded from a free stock site, so I will put the link in the description below for you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Please post any comments you have so I can make future videos even better. Let's get started. Okay, so first you want to draw the eye out. I am using just a HB pencil, nothing fancy. All we need to do is get the general shape out there. The shape is really important as it will control how the entire eye will look, and so if the shape is off, then the entire eye will be off. It doesn't matter how good your detail in your eye is, the shape is the most important. So when I draw out the eye, I will draw out all the important areas, such as the pupil, the highlight, the tear duct, the upper and lower lid, the skin around the eye, and the sections of fur. This way it will make it a lot easier when you're coming to actually color in your eye because you know where everything is and there's no questions that you have to yourself and there's no guessing. I'll even draw some lines to indicate the length of the fur as well as the direction that the fur is growing. That way it will make it a lot easier later. So moving on, I define the shape with the black pastel pencil. I use the black because of the fact that we need to be able to make a defined shape so there's no confusion later. It's important to get this section done first, so that way the shape of the eye is actually really important to show where the dog is looking and the angle at which the head is. So to have it all uniform, we really need this to make a lot of sense. So I also like to use black for the pupil as well, so that way we can define where the dog is looking. If it's looking directly at you or if it's looking at the window, it's all very important. You'll notice I leave space for the highlight. So that way we can make the highlight colors nice and rich. And so we're not forcing light colors over black just for the sake of it. Which is especially good if you're using colored pencil for this. Alright, so once we start adding the colors to the pupil, I like to start with a mid-range color. So it's usually a mid-range brown for dogs. If you're going to do blue eyes, of course, it'll be a mid-range blue. So that way you can add lights and darks over the top. If you're doing colored pencils, you're going to want to start with a very light base because of course you don't have that ability of putting light colors over dark as much as pastels or paint. For the iris, you can add tons of colors to them and I always like to add a lot. I'll probably add something between 7 and 16 colors to an iris. You really want a ton of variation. And what's really interesting about irises is you can also add a lot of brighter colors. I used a lot of tangerine, oranges, a lot of yellows in this dog eye because we want to make it vibrant and we want it to make it, the center of the drawing. We want to bring that life in. An exercise I really love to do is I'll Google search different eyes of animals and then I'll draw little studies of them so I can focus on what details are present in this specific species. For example, if you're drawing a dog, they have a tear duct, whereas if you're drawing a fish, then they don't have that. But you have to ask yourself, well, what details does a fish eye have that you can then incorporate into your fish drawing? So it's really good to be able to look at different species and know what you're going to put where. Another example is goats and horses. Instead of having a round pupil, they have an elongated oval pupil that's horizontal. Of course, this allows them to be able to see a much further distance versus perception of front distance. So they can see around themselves versus perception of distance in front of them. So usually around the edge of the iris, it's a lot darker, right? And so just use your reference photo that I have given you or that you're looking at, and you'll be able to see that the ring around it is usually darker. So I usually add some chocolate browns in there. You'll also notice that I add specks of dark colors within the iris in the lighter sections. This is because that in eyes they have a lot of texture, and so you can then add different detail within that iris because it's made up of actually razors and dips so that then you're able to add those different variations and give it a lot more interest than just having a flat base. So the colors I used for this ranged from cream all the way to a dark chocolate brown. So for the highlight, I'm starting with the blue. I want this pup to look like he's outside, so adding the reflection of the surrounding area in the highlight solidifies that concept. If he was going to be inside, you could do the shape of a window or a circle of light for a camera flash. But for this guy, what we're going to do is we're going to do the sky and clouds. And then the sun will be the main highlight, and it will just be a spot of pure white. The surrounding eye is just as important. As you can see, I've added the lower eyelid, and I've added it with blue and very light blue, almost white, to give it some definition, to show that that's where the light is shining on it. The tear duct is also important, and so we want to add details in there as well, which can actually add a lot of interest to your drawing and a lot of realism. People really notice when you've got the tear duct in and when you haven't, and it's not something people think to add in, so it's really great when it is in there. Eyelashes is also something a lot of people forget, and it's a lot of animals actually do have them. Even reptiles will have some scales that come out like eyelashes. They're like little pointed scales. So by adding them over the highlight, that'll just add a bit more detail and more realism. For the eyelashes, I have started with the black, so that way I'm drawing the eyelashes that are most in shadow. And then as I bring the eyelashes forward, I'm just using a lighter gray, so that way the light is hitting that one more than the eyelashes that are in shadow. So now we're going to do the skin around the eye. As you can see, I'm doing it in a bluish grey. I'm just layering colours on top of one another. That way what it's going to do is it's going to fill in that textured paper, the pastel matte paper, and so it's going to make them a lot smoother for when you're going to add additional details on top of that. So when you're using pastels, what you want to do is create a nice soft even layer, and then so I've done that with the bluish grey, and now I'm adding the brownish grey over the top to just desaturate it a little bit because I found it a bit too intense. And then I'm darkening the areas with black, so that way it just stands out a little more and is more accurate to the photo. So here you can see me putting in some hairs, some dark black hairs, so we have more of a transition from going from that bluish skin into the fur. Otherwise it's going to be too harsh of a line to make it look natural. So now I've re-gone in with a bit of the light greys just to add some details within that skin. What you'll find is the skin around the eyes has a lot of creases and shadows and things, so you want to point out those areas that have the highlights as well as the shadowed areas. On the fur around the eye, I'm using cream and I want to make a nice flat section. I'm pressing lightly with the pencil so that we can make an even layer. We don't want to fill in those layers because this pastel matte paper can take about 7 or 8 layers, and so we don't want to fill them all in at the beginning because we also want to add hair and highlights and shadows over the top, and so we need all the layers that we can get. We want each section to feather into one another, so I've added the dark grey from the eyelashes into the cream fur so that it feathers into one another, and so it's not a drastic cutoff. So I use a lot of dark yellows and browns for the shadows of the cream fur. The main color is cream, but we need those shadows in there so that it adds definition. And when you're doing your shadows for your fur, make sure they cross one another and that they're not a uniform space apart, because we want to make sure that it's natural. And natural hair crosses over one another and it's messy. It's not uniform and precise. So we want to show it like that. If you guys want to see my full tutorial on drawing hair, then please subscribe because that's going to be the very next video. Then we also just add, darker browns and then lighter browns, going all the way from white all the way to, when we start adding in black. When I'll start adding in black or dark gray, that will be the skin showing through the hair, right? And that will be, I will add that in the between the phase of the hair and the skin. So it feathers out the transition a little bit. So we don't go from skin directly to fur. We don't want that abrupt difference, otherwise it's going to look really unnatural. So then once I've added the black or dark grey, I'll add the cream over the top of the fur so that way it continues to feather out the transition, so it makes it look more natural. So that's this eye finished. We took a really complicated subject and broke it down to its simplest steps. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and give me any comments so I can make my future videos better. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see future videos. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.